Good afternoon, everybody. Hey there. Welcome. It's nice to see all of you here on this rainy afternoon. I'm Kathleen Franz. I am the interim director for the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And I'm here to welcome you today and kick off our panel. So on behalf of the Lemelson Center, welcome to the Inventive Lives program featuring inventor-athlete Shawn Springs and inventive identity expert Dr. Joanna Garner. Yay! So if you're joining us here at the museum for the first time, the Lemelson Center is the Smithsonian's leader in studying invention history and encouraging inventive creativity. The center sponsors fellowships, collects archival materials, does exhibitions and public programs and educational programs like this one. And our annual Inventive Lives program series presents unique opportunities for audiences to meet contemporary inventors for live conversations that demystify who inventors are, what they look like, and how inventiveness is cultivated. So, to celebrate the opening of our brand new Change Your Game exhibition, which many of you just saw and got a tour of, the Lemelson Center has dedicated this year's Inventive Lives series to the stories and themes in that exhibition. So it really takes sports as its theme this year. The Change Your Game exhibition opened on March 15th in the Jerome and Dorothy Lemelson Hall of Invention and was underwritten by the generous support of the USPTO, Nike, and the Lemelson Foundation, among others. The 3,500 square foot family-friendly interactive exhibition explores the dynamic role of invention and technology in sports. So it asks who invents for sports and why? And how can we discover and nurture our own creative identities? So before I introduce today's moderator, I have just a couple of housekeeping things for everyone. So please hold your questions to the end of the moderated discussion. And our team is going to be walking around at the end with microphones and will take your questions. The program today is designed for all ages. And we follow the Smithsonian's Code of Conduct, which outlines civil and respectful engagement throughout the live program. The program is being recorded, and you will be able to watch it on the Lemelson Center's website in a couple of weeks. And of course, please check that your phones are on silent, although it's a very active, lively atmosphere in the museum. So now I'm going to welcome our moderator, Jeff Brody. Come on up, Jeff. Jeff is the vice president for museums at the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But before he took that new position, Jeff was here as the acting director for the Lemelson Center. Jeff actually was a lead curator on the Change Your Game exhibition. And over his long career at the Lemelson Center, Jeff really challenged the center to think about invention in non-traditional ways, to think about who inventors are, what they look like, thinking about diverse inventors, and thinking about challenging our assumption about what creative activity is and where it takes place. So let's give Jeff a warm welcome, and he will introduce the panelists.
Kathy, thank you very much. It's great to be here in the building again. It's great to be with my invention education colleagues, and it's great to have other members visiting the museum from the public be part of this conversation as well. So we are in a short time frame, and we want to have much opportunity for Shawn and Joanna to share their insights with us. So I'm going to get right to it. And this individualized program is very special because it reflects the work of the project team for the Change Your Game exhibition to really research, cultivate, and get to know the athletes and inventors who changed how we play our games. And those conversations we had over many years were wonderful opportunities to gain insights about the inventive mindset. And so we're really happy to share some of those thoughts and thinking with you today. So first off, I want to introduce Shawn Springs. He's the gentleman sitting in the middle. Shawn was born in Williamsburg, Virginia, and attended high school in Silver Spring, Maryland, close by to here. And he earned his bachelor's degree in sociology from The Ohio State University. I got that part right. Shawn is the CEO and co-founder of Windpact, which is a software and technology company, a material sciences company here in Leesburg, Virginia. And while initially Windpact began as a company focused on protecting football players from the dangers of head injury and brain trauma inherent in the sport, Windpact quickly evolved into a multifaceted material sciences company that works with all kinds of manufacturers across a broad range of disciplines and industries to protect all kinds of users and consumers from the dangers of collisions and impacts. So as you'll hear, Shawn's motivation to create Windpact was directly tied to his personal experiences as an athlete. He attended Ohio State University, where he was a two-time academic All-Big Ten athlete. He was the Big Ten Walter Camp All-American Award winner, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in 1996, and was elected to the Ohio State University's Sports Hall of Fame in 2022. He played 13 seasons in the National Football League, many of them here in Washington, D.C., and he was the third overall draft pick in the 1997 draft of the Seattle Seahawks. Didn't expect that, but thank you. So Shawn has led an innovative life, life as an athlete, an inventor, and an entrepreneur. But now as a community leader, a public speaker, and industry advisor, Shawn is doing his part to inspire the next generation of inventive thinkers. So please help me welcome Shawn to the stage. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce my now really good friend, Dr. Joanna Garner. She is the executive director of Old Dominion University's Center for Educational Partnerships, which is mission to support public education and has a particular focus on broadening access to and participation in STEM and related areas. Joanna's research focuses on the design and evaluation of contexts that enhance youth and adults' learning and identity exploration, a theme we've been talking about to a great extent. She, along with Dr. Avi Kaplan, is the co-creator and founder of the Dynamic Systems Model of Role Identity, a foundational framework for understanding identity formation that was essential to the formation or the development of the Change Your Game exhibition. So together, Joanna with Avi really educated and taught the project team about identity formation and helped us develop the inventive identity components that you just saw in the Change Your Game exhibition. And Joanna will continue her work with the Lemelson Center and conduct evaluations with our visitors, and her results will provide insights to the invention education community and the museum field that will guide further efforts to promote inventive identity in our students and in our visitors. So so please help me welcome Joanna to the stage. And Joanna's going to do the Herculean task of introducing some of the identity concepts that were essential to our learning and developing the exhibition. So I'll ask Joanna.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Good, good, good. So, we know that inventiveness is this capacity to generate novel solutions to the problems that we face. But what does it really mean to have an inventive identity? We're just going to take a minute and think about that idea and break it open a little bit. But I want you to be thinking about your inventive identity and Shawn's story of his inventive identity and inventive journey as we have this conversation. So when we think about being inventive, our inventive actions come from our understanding of ourselves, our self-perceptions, our goals, our beliefs, and our what we call action possibilities, what we think we can do in a given situation, which means that it depends how we think of ourselves in a given situation as to what actions we might take. Actions also feed our inventive or our identity systems. So when we take actions, we are changing our self-perceptions sometimes. We're changing our goals, we're changing our beliefs, we're changing what we think we can do. If any of you have ever stepped outside of your comfort zone and done something and then grown in how you think about yourselves, that's an example of what we're talking about. So there's this reciprocal relationship between our identities and how we act on the world and the actions that we take and how they feed back into our identities. Now, we know that these actions are situated, meaning that they happen in specific contexts, and often those contexts involve a social role. So, for example, right now, you have the social role of being an audience member in an Innovative Lives panel session, and I have the role of presenter. That allows me to do certain things like speak to you that wouldn't seem weird. And if you were to stand up and dance, that might seem a little out of context, out of role, right? I'm just saying. So these social roles that we have are situational as well. And one thing that can happen with us as public members of the public and us when we work with children, is they can see themselves as being inventive, perhaps, in one situation or one context. But really, we want them to think of themselves as being inventive in all contexts, right? In all roles. If you transfer that concept into a museum setting, you have all been museum visitors in Change Your Game. So you have enacted the role identity of the museum visitor in Change Your Game. And one of the challenges that we faced and we hope we overcame in developing Change Your Game is to not maintain those barriers between what you experience in a museum context, what you learn, and how you think about the rest of your life, the other roles that you might have. So we've really tried to break down those barriers between what happens in one setting and help you transfer it over to another setting. And that's one reason why, if you've been to Change Your Game, you will have seen questions that directly ask you about yourself in everyday life. And that's what we want our visitors, especially our young audiences, to break down this idea that an inventor or being inventive is something that someone else might do. It's a role that someone else might inhabit, but I may not inhabit that role. So I hope that perhaps you explored your inventive identity as you were going through Change Your Game. From a design perspective, and again from an identity exploration perspective, we have built in some scaffolds or supports to help you practice being inventive. So if you notice, the interactives had specific inventive strategies. How many of you did the interactives? Yeah? And you saw the inventive strategies were explicitly called out. So sometimes young audiences or us in one setting might not know exactly what we need to do to transfer to another setting. Again, that's something else that Change Your Game we feel is groundbreaking in pushing ideas from content and stories of inventors to help the visitor see the world a little bit differently, change their beliefs about the world, and then change their beliefs about themselves. So that's just a little bit of background about the theoretical framing of Change Your Game. We included all of the feedback from the target audiences into the design and really built on this idea of using content and stories to help visitors not just learn about that content and those stories, but also to learn about themselves. And then take that learning and go out into the world and change their own game. So now we're going to transition into a conversation with Shawn. I hope some of those ideas might bubble up again as we have this conversation. And towards the end of our session, we will be asking you about your own inventive identities.
All right, thanks, Joanna. Okay, Shawn, here we go.
Yeah.
You want to just start, or just kidding?
No,
You're good. You're good. So in these conversations, again, a large component of my work and the things I did here were really trying to get at the stories behind the stories, the inventor, the invention, but let's dig a little bit deeper and explore some of their background and sort of where the ideas and the motivations came from. Mm-hmm. So Shawn, I not to be cliche, but to kind of start early on in the beginning, tell me, like, when you think back to your childhood,
right,
what do you think about, what kinds of experiences were memorable for you in addition to sports, but including sports? What other kinds of activities interested you and occupied your time?
That's a great question. I do want to start off by saying thank all the teachers for being here. You guys are wonderful, right? Because as we get into innovation, I'll talk about innovation, and that's progress and growth. And I think the teachers are the most amazing people, because to answer your question, without some amazing teachers, I remember Miss Scott in 4th grade, Miss Joyce Amatucci, who I voted for to be NFL Teacher of the Year, and she won, in high school. So early on in my life, I believe that, and you guys know because you guys are teachers, I believe that as a kid, we all have a humble curiosity, right? The world is an amazing place. It's an opportunity to be creative, and it's just fun. And I think I was that kid, right? I always saw, I played sports and fight my cousins in the yard and tackle the typical boy things, but we'd also be like playing with frogs in the country, things you do in the country. But for me, it was just about, I remember my mom giving me my first erecto set. I don't even know if they still make that. And I built a little elevator, and I had my little G.I. Joe in the leg with, so I always love building things like that. And when on rainy days like this, I would just be playing with Legos and different things, building things. So it came from just a natural curiosity. I think that most kids who see the world as an amazing and creative place have.
And I'm just curious, when you were playing with those things, were those activities that you engaged in yourself, or were you playing with friends or other people?
Yeah, for the most part, I was the only kid. So I spent a lot of time with myself, just talking to myself and just allowing my imagination to run wild. And I believe that as a kid and as an adult, we have to dream. We have to continue to dream. So at an early age, I just remember just dreaming. And I did have cousins and friends and people I played with. But for the most part, it was just like, I was a kid, letting my imagination go wild and see what would happen.
Yeah. So as you looking back and thinking about that time, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A football player. No. So I have a unique life. Growing up in Williamsburg, Virginia, it was one of those where I had I lived with my grandmother, my family, so I had cousins on, all throughout the neighborhood, and my parents were pretty young when they had me out of high school. But my dad became a professional football player, and my mom went into the military. And for me, I just love playing sports. I was a kid being out in the yard, whether I was kicking a kickball or playing baseball, doing something active. And I knew that I wanted to be an athlete. I love catching the ball. I just did all the boy stuff, man. Throwing, when you're in the country, you throw rocks and stuff at each other, riding a bike down the street, and so I was able to live out that dream.
So you do have a different kind of support, family and support community around you. So your dad's off playing professional football in Dallas. Your mom's in the military.
So who else was around to give you guidance?
So I had an uncle who was an engineer, who played football, but also became an engineer. And I had my grandmother and my cousins, and really it was for me growing up. You know, I always had amazing teachers. Really, this is truth. I'd never forget. I got in trouble on the playground because I was throwing the ball too hard, and Miss Scott, she would bring me in. Back then, they would bring you, if you got in trouble on the playground, they would bring you in, and you have to do like extra, long division or multiplication. And sometimes if I got too much trouble, you still write your name on, on the board after school. But I had a teacher, she just saw something in me, and she would like give me extra work, and or send me, it's like, hey, you're in the 3rd grade, but you should be in the 6th grade math. So I had teachers at an early age, and I'm not just saying that because we have all teachers here, but this is a true story, besides, because my mom, when my dad went off to the NFL, I lived with my mom in PG County, about 20 miles from here and not too far from here. And it was kind of a rough neighborhood, but I just leaned on the folks in my community and my teachers at school, because a lot of times if you weren't in school, you could find yourself getting into trouble in certain parts of the city.
Yeah. Was there a particular instance or example where one of these teachers really had you do something that really caused you to think differently about something in your life?
That's a great question. I always felt that I had, in school came pretty easy to me. So I always had teachers who, I remember one teacher in 8th grade, her name was Miss Gobetz. This is a true story. In 8th grade, the fire alarm went off one time, and Miss Gobetz, she's like under her desk, right? And all the kids are like, hey, laughing and everything, and I go under the desk. And I said, hey, Miss Gobetz, everything okay? And I come to find out she was here because her husband was at Case Western Reserve, and she was like, I think she grew up in the war times in like Yugoslavia. And I was so nice to her, and she took a liking to me, and she helped me in Latin. And I never forget, I couldn't pick up Spanish, but I could pick up Latin. I became a National Merit Scholar in Latin because of a teacher like that took a liking to me. And it was hard as hell, I will tell you that. But I couldn't pick up Spanish. So she really helped me. And that just showed me that if an act of kindness to someone, because you don't know their circumstance, just talking with her, spending time with her after school, knowing I needed extra help in that, because that was one of the few courses that was hard for me. And that gave me the confidence. If you do something nice to a person, an act of kindness, and they help you, you can accomplish amazing things. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to move forward just a little bit here. Mm-hmm. So you attend The Ohio State University.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about that experience there.
Yep.
And in addition to playing football, the kinds of things that you experienced or were exposed to that you found influential in your future work.
Yep.
And then particularly then turning to being drafted to Seattle
Yep.
in 1997. And what did it mean to be in that city, in that place at that time that changed your thinking a bit?
Yeah, so let's start with just going to Ohio State. So obviously, I was pretty good in school, had the grades, and most people know my father's a professional athlete, but he was so hard on me in school, right? So I had pretty good grades, and I was able to win a scholarship to Ohio State. And I never forget, because all these schools that recruit you, they're gonna tell you, we love you. And you're going to start as a freshman, soon you get there, and then you show up on campus and you realize you're like 5th string on the depth. It's like, man, I thought I was starting. No, we got 3 seniors ahead of you. Don't worry about it. But that taught me, that lesson at Ohio State, being a football player, one, it taught me like, hey, there's a lot of people who can play sports. There's a lot of people who are good at sports. So make sure you got to come out of here with a degree. That was the number one thing that my mother and my father taught me. The second thing I learned at Ohio State, although I was in the sports department, I was always a kid I was able to dream and set high-level goals. I knew I wanted to go to the NFL. So I was like, all right, what's my plan? How am I going to be in the NFL? So first I was like, I want to go to the NFL. Then I said, well, before I can go to the NFL, the mid-level goal, I got to be the best at Ohio State. And if I'm going to be the best at Ohio State, I got to be the best in the room. So I found myself setting like high goals, mid goals. That's when teachers still teach at school, like, hey, write down your goals. And I would write down those goals, and I was able to systematically go through all those goals. And that led me to being one of the best players in the Big Ten, on and off the field. I was academic All Big Ten twice. I was a defensive player of the year in the Big Ten once I became the best defensive player on my team. Then I was the highest drafted corner in the history of the NFL. And that led me to draft day, where I was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. Thank you for the one fan that's out there. I don't tell people I play because all my teams are sorry. The Commanders sorry, the Seahawks sorry, and the Patriots was bad this year, but thank you for the support. And on draft day, so I get drafted to Seattle, and this is a really, really cool story because being a Washington, D.C. kid, I didn't know anything about the Pacific Northwest. I'm like, man, they're not even on TV. They're terrible, right? We don't even play with these guys on the video games. So I get drafted out to Seattle. Everybody's like, it's beautiful. A week later, they fly me back out. The organization fly me back out and say, hey, Mr. Allen wants you to go around because we got to convince the people in King County that we need to keep the team in town because the team is up for sale. The Baring family, I think it was the Baring one, Ken Baring was selling the team. Mr. Allen had put up $300 million of his own money to keep the stadium, but we needed more money from the city to build the new stadium. And I never forget the conversation I had riding around. We went to Redmond, Issaquah, all the little towns in King County, and Mr. Allen would get up and talk about how he was going to help redevelop downtown, build a new stadium, and bring all this exciting technology and innovation to Seattle. And I'm just like, wow, I'm just blown away. I'm from the East Coast, went to the Midwest. And that's when it hit me, like innovation, like technology. And I'd never forget this question. I said, Mr. Allen, did you know you're going to be a billionaire? And he said, Shawn, when me and William started off in a 150-foot office in Bellevue, it was about, the term today would be disruptive, about doing something different on the World Wide Web. And that stuck with me. I go to my apartment that evening, and I was like, wow, this guy did a lot on the internet and everything. And I asked my buddy, I said, man, what do you do? He said, man, I'm a coder. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that is, but I'm about to go work for a company to sell books online. I was like, that's dumb. Just go to Borders, right? Right? I guess Amazon would have been good, right? Amazon. So then the second person, like in the same neighborhood, because it's like $2,200, and I'm like 21 years old, like, man, this is expensive. Second person I go to said, what do you do? He said, man, I'm about to go open up these franchises that sell $3 waters and coffees. Like, who's gonna buy that? That's dumb. Call Starbucks, right? And then the one girl I actually knew, she worked for Microsoft, so I was able to create a millionaire every 12 days. But at that time, it was like Amazon, Microsoft, and Starbucks. And Seattle was this small town. Like, it's a really small town that now it's like the Silicon Forest. But after that conversation and seeing what my peers and people of the same age was doing, I was just like, man, this is the future. I was just blown away, and I fell in love with technology and innovation, really kind of start to understand it after meeting Paul Allen and being mentored and being his first draft pick. But that's how I got inspired by technology, seeing what was happening in Seattle.
That's great. Mm-hmm. So let me jump ahead. So let's.
They don't want to clap for the Seahawks.
So let's tell me how you started to develop. So you have this mindset about the importance of innovation technology, the potential for it to change lives. how did that begin to intersect with your thinking about head injuries and traumas and that sort?
Yeah, that led to, so after playing my first 7 years in Seattle, then I came here to play closer to home. Growing up in the East Coast, I wanted to play for my home team in Washington. By my 10th year in the league, I noticed there was a lot of noise around traumatic brain injury. Most people remember when the movie, towards the end of my career, 3 years later, the movie Concussion came out with Will Smith. And then right before that, I remember in the locker room one day looking at the Time magazine. There was a deflated football on Time or whatever, and it was talking about it's football killing our kids. So I start to see that, wow, like the sport I play, the sport my father played, and all his friends that I love, and there's a lot of noise around how serious impacts the effect on the brain and the body, and I start to kind of feel it a little bit. We start to have doctors come in, start to talk to us about if you're injured or if you have a concussion or something is not right, when you come in, let us know. And that started to happen towards the end of my career. If I'm answering your question, that's when I started to notice a little bit, and I just became more and more curious why the technology that my father wore when he played for the Cowboys in 87 or 86 or 85, his last couple years, was the very same technology that I was wearing in the NFL. And I was just blown away. I was like, oh my God, I hope my kids aren't wearing this. And I wonder if my dad would say that. So that's when I start to get the bug and start to say, I got to take this a little more serious and understand it.
And at that time, how did you imagine your future at that point? What roles did you imagine yourself playing to help solve that problem?
Oh, yeah, man. So how did it lead to me trying to fix the game I love so much for the next generation of athletes? I was always I believe in people. I believe in people, and I believe if enough of the smart people in the room, you can solve some of the most amazing challenges. And I really do believe in people. And I was curious why I didn't change. So what I started to do is start to ask some of the smartest people. And I had access to people because I played in the NFL, right? So I had access to the CEO of Harley Davidson, who was a mentor of mine from Ohio State. I had access to Wake Forest, Dr. Joel Stitzel and guys at the biomedical department at Wake Forest. And if you don't know, you go to some of who you believe are some of the smartest people and you ask questions. So that led me to saying, you know what? I saw a technology in a baby car seat that was revolutionizing the way we protect kids' heads, right? And I was like, well, let me look at this car seat. One, it's like $600. I'm glad I got it free. So, that's bad. That was in the NFL. I'm still looking for free stuff, right? Shit, kids are expensive, y'all know. So, right? So I'm looking at this technology in this car seat because I developed a relationship with a guy when I was at New England, and he was working at a company called Safety First, and it absorbed and dispersed energy. And I was just like, man, that's pretty cool, because when you think about football is a series of car crashes. Now, if this technology can protect a baby's head at a 40-mile-per-hour side impact, well, I don't hit that hard, but some people do, where it should be able to protect in the football space. So after having the relationships I had and seeing that technology first, I went and started to investigate, and I started to develop a team, and that led to me developing the company, Windpact.
So Shawn, what strikes me about what you've said so far is you have this wonderful arc, this timeline where you're thinking of yourself as someone who is, you have goals,
Yep.
right? You have this passion, this motivation. You want to solve this problem. You have beliefs about the world and how you want to make the world better, right? You have access to people who can help you do that, and you feel comfortable, right, to go and access these resources. So I'm curious, did you think of yourself as an innovator at that point, or an inventive person, or when did that kind of come into your thinking?
As an inventor or an innovator, probably when I saw the exhibit for the first time in the Smithsonian. I think we all have, again, I talk about this curiosity, or how many times in life have you come across something like, oh, that's like grass but turf, and it's like field turf, and Seattle is raining. It's like, I wonder if they could make a field that's grass and turf, right? That exists today, like field turf, right? But how many times have you like, man, I wish I didn't have to vacuum and I could just put this thing on the ground and the vacuum go all over the house, right? I think when you think about solving, you don't see yourself necessarily as an innovator. We all are innovators, but you start with the idea, how can this be better? And I've always looked at the world. A lot of people don't know this secret let out. I wanted to be an architect. In high school, I wanted to be an architect. Little kid, you asked me, I wanted to be a football player because I was following my dad's footsteps. But if that wasn't my trajectory in life, I wanted to be an architect because I like seeing things be developed. And I think we all see problems, and we like go, wow, what if that was this, right? So being an innovator or an inventor, it's more so, how can I make the world better? Right. That was my thing. And then the titles, if they come, they come. If not, I just want to make the game safer. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so now you're leading teams of people.
Yep.
Right? And they're engineers and they're
Yep.
designers, and they have these other roles within your company. And so how do you help them feel inventive or innovative?
Yeah, because if you look at the world and says, I see possibilities and not obstacles, right? Because oftentimes we look at the world and we're like, I can't do this because of this. So I'm always talking about, what is a possibility? And I think if more people, and that's how I try to inspire the team and people I work with, is see the possibility, right? I'm just fascinated with companies like Nike and Apple, and I love that, they tell the story of Steve Jobs talking about, I don't want a phone with buttons, I just want a glass phone and, make it the iPhone. So, and when you think about inspiring people, you have to think about, hey man, together we can accomplish some amazing things. There will be some challenges. There will be some losses. There will be some wins, but let's think about the possibilities. Yeah. Focus on the possibilities.
So you mentioned that in your unique life,
Yep.
you had access and opportunity.
Yep.
Even so, there was no guarantee or no reasonable conclusion that out of that experiences you would create Windpact.
Yep.
But thinking about other people
Yep.
who don't have those opportunities, what do you think is important to help provide inspiration and opportunity for them? And what do you see as your role within that?
Right. I think as we talk to all the teachers out here and we talk about people in general, I think everyone needs that space to, earlier I said dream, but give them that room to learn, to make mistakes, right? Like, give them that, like if you believe in people and you can help them foster innovation, or you talk with them, or just give them that space to say, you know what, why can't it be you? And you're allowed to fail. I think so often, like, we don't give people the room to say, I made a mistake. And I believe everyone out there, if you're talking about helping people innovate, invent, inspire others, you got to give them that grace. You got to give them that space to say you can do it. And then you also got to give them that, like, you can make a mistake and it's okay. And I want you to learn, whether that's in business or anything, just to learn. And for me, I believe that I'm put on earth to provide a service to others. And I think if we all come with that attitude that I'm here to provide a service to you, and we have that relationship, a partnership, a friendship, a bond, however you want to label it, I think that type of, that fosters like greatness.
That's great.
So I want to just quickly ask you about,
Yep.
as you're going forward, what are some of the obstacles and difficulties that you've encountered as the leader of a technology company, and how do you overcome it? Where do you get your resilience, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Well, I'm a faith-driven man, so I believe in God, and I grew up that way. But in my life, I can tell you, like, I was the highest drafted corner, but I could also tell you how many times I got beat, or how many times I've lost, or there's countless times where I've just, even in business, I made the wrong decision, hired the wrong person, didn't make the move at a faster time. And for me, it's like, I never forget those. I take those as lessons learned, and I use as motivation. And quite honestly, I'm a non-technical founder, leading engineers. You know how many times I walked in a room being, one, an athlete, two, a minority, where people's like, there's no way in hell you thought of that, right? You know what that self-talk is like, and how frustrated you become when people look at you, or they label you as like, oh, you're just an athlete. And in the locker room, I'll be like, what the F does that mean? But for this conversation, I'm not the only one that experienced that. We see that in our, unfortunately, we still see that with women and minorities, and everyone at some point has probably been doubted or discriminated against. So that self-talk is important. When nobody else believes in it, when you're laying in bed, and and you're like, what the hell am I doing? My wife's on my back. My kids don't listen to me. No one else sees my vision. It starts with that own belief in yourself, and that's hard. You land on your back, and you be like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, right? But you gotta have faith. You gotta get up, and you keep doing it. And part of that resilience comes from just, I believe in a bigger mission. I believe in that, if I'm not doing this for me, I do it because one of you may have a son that plays football, and he might get hit. And there's kids who never bounce back from that. There's people who ride bikes. There's somebody whose brother, father, aunt, mother, cousin is serving in the military. So for me, it's not about me. Never is about me. It's about how I can make the world a better place. And that keeps me going. And trust me, it's been some times my investor's in the room, he'll tell you, and I just be like, I don't have the answers. I need help. Right? And we all been there. We see the exhibit, right? But you don't see the time when you're like sitting in front of investors and they're just like, I care about that, but I don't want to invest in your company, right? Right? Well, do you really care about it, right? Or you need to show me more traction. Well, by the time I start making more money, I won't need you. So, right? So, to answer your question, it's faith, it's self-belief, like just being able to talk yourself into like getting up, you can make it. And it's knowing that it's bigger than you.
Yeah. So you're transferring what has worked for you in these settings as an athlete, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur. And it sounds like you're melding those and transferring those into other areas of your life, and also helping to transfer that into other people, right?
Yep.
You're filling up other people by what you've done, but also by who you are and the role model that you are for other people.
Yeah. Essentially, isn't that what it's about? I mean, like, seriously. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a teacher because there's a lot of bad kids. You know, my son is bad, right? Right? That's what it's about, right? Like, how do we help the next generation? How do we give back? How do we do our part? And when it comes to sports, I used to tell guys all the time, you know, unfortunately, you know, a LeBron James and Steph Curry is celebrated more than the person who created a messenger RNA, right? Saved us from COVID or is doing something amazing. So it's our responsibility, if you have that platform and I have that stage, to be able to make a difference. Otherwise, you bullshitting. I tell you straight up, like, what are you doing, right? That's how I would talk to guys. How are you making a difference, right? And I tell my kids, I got one goal in life. You know, I want you to be, you know, people, great human beings who help make this world better when you leave than when you came into the world. And that's the goal, right? So when we having these conversations about innovation, it's about progress, it's about growth, it's about making people better, making the world better.
So Shawn, that's actually the perfect segue
Okay.
into our question for you. So having heard how important it is and how Shawn is inspiring other people to be inventive, to be creative, to be persistent, right? To be resilient. Our question for you, and it's actually the last question that's in your sketch it book, your little zine that you had, and I'm gonna grab it here. So our question is, how would you use what you saw today, what you've heard today, what you've seen today and change your game to promote inventive identity in your work, make you more inventive, and in the work that you do with your audiences? And we would love for you to spend about 5 minutes, just turn to the individuals who are next to you, in front of you, behind you, turn around and have a conversation about that, and then we'd love to hear from you. What did you take away from today?
Go.
Could go to
2 more minutes, folks.
Okay, that was a quick 5 minutes. Thank you so much. So I was wondering, could we hear from maybe 2 brave volunteers from groups to just very briefly say what they've taken from today to promote inventive identity in their own work and in their work with audiences? Yeah, go ahead. We have a microphone for you, yes.
Hi. First of all, it was amazing hearing all of you speak. It was really resonated with me. I am a program manager for Volo Kids, and we provide free sport programs. And something that I commonly see is kids always being afraid to mess up or not being brave enough to play out on the field even though they don't know the sport that well. A lot of times what I hear is like week 1 of programming, and they're just like, I can't get it in the goal, like kicking the soccer ball or basketball or something along those lines. And sort of what you said, making it a safe space for kids to be able to fail and learn from that, is what I really took to heart. And something I tend to do is like ask silly questions. Well, I'm like, well, have you done a league before? Are you like Michael Jordan? They're always like, no, you're silly. And I'm like, well, there you go. Like even those professional players have to take time to learn and practice. And it's not just like a one on done all. It takes time. And hearing you say that, it was really, it was eye opening, because now I'm being inspired to like present at the end of a program being like, what is it that you want to change about what we did? What is it that you see differently? Like how would you like the programs to be running in the next go around? And really listening to them.
That's great, thank you. We have time for one more report out, one more group, and then we're going to open it up for a few minutes just if anyone has questions for Shawn.
1, 2, 3 groups? 2 groups?
Oh.
Hi, wanted to say I thought the most pivotal part of the discussion was when you said, when she asked, when did you think of yourself as an inventor? And when you said, when I saw the exhibit. And I think that really hits to one of the issues to help a kid get an inventor identity. Somebody needs to say, wow, that was very inventive. You're a great inventor. Have you ever thought about inventing as a career? You know, you're just calling it out by name. You know, because I think sometimes that's I don't want to say the most obvious, but it is very straightforward. And I like to use you are kind of to put a name around what I think about what they're doing. And the second thing, specifically about what I took away from today, is the questions in the Change Your Game exhibit that were in bold underneath were phenomenal. I wanted to go and take a picture of every single one of them and compile a list, because I'm not a big sports person. No offense to sports people, but that's just not my thing. But I could relate to those questions. Because it wasn't, how can you make football better? It was, how can you make the sport you like, available to more people? And it was like, ooh, I could do that. And the way that those questions were presented engaged me as a visitor versus informing me of somebody else's great skills or great stuff. And that was the switch for me. I mean, I walked around quickly, most every place else in this wonderful Smithsonian, and I was informed. You know, and there were places in the Spark and things that were, you know, more engaging. But with the Change Your Game, I felt like I was being asked and I was drawn in. And it was the first exhibit I've actually read every single board throughout the entire thing and not just look at the pretty pictures. So and I think that's important to call out, because from an exhibit standpoint, I was like, okay, yeah, now this is an exhibit that pulls you in and makes you feel like an inventor and really does change the game. So kudos to the huge team that make that happen.
Thank you so much. We just have a couple of minutes left, and so we maybe have time for one or two questions for Shawn, if anyone has a question.
Hi, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for sharing your story. I'm a neuroscientist, so that also makes me happy to hear that, you know, what your invention is. My question is about resources. So you admitted that you have had a lot of success because you were connected to certain individuals and you did have access to a certain number of resources. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit. I know we teased it a little bit apart, but just wanting to hear a little bit more about a lot of us work with underserved communities, with students who do not have access to resources and therefore may not feel like they have the agency they don't have that person in their back pocket to talk to gain mentorship from. So in those environments, you know, maybe what did you learn? I know you spoke of your childhood and your upbringing in sort of different communities. You know, how did that inventive mindset and identity get reinforced even before you had access to all the resources, and how might you be able to continue to grow that in others? And how might we?
I think I understand. The first part of your question was, how do you succeed with limited resources? That is a challenge, and it's something as a country we all need to do our part in figuring out how we make this creative space, how we support a Lemelson Foundation. You guys touched on it, David, and I wasn't gonna say G Money. I was about to say G Money. The foundation. There are more and more groups, foundations, folks out there who understand that this is a real challenge that we're faced with, and so you know that's something that we got to continue to work towards. Supporting people, creating a safe environment, giving opportunities where typically we don't look into the areas, you know, where there's underrepresented communities. Because when you think about innovation, it's not the color of your skin or your sex or anything. Creative ideas and innovative thoughts come from us all. We all have that in us. So that's something that we got to continue to work at as a community, and in a lot of communities today are trying to help solve that problem. You got to search and you got to look, but there are communities who are trying to help solve that problem.
Just to echo, amazing story, really incredible. My name is Chinwe Ohanale. I'm with the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. We're about democratizing IP education. So IP is probably written all over the work that you did. The question I have is, right now, I think a lot of the growing generation, they're learning a lot from social media and learning, I'm using that word very loosely, because you can't always guarantee, right, the information that you're finding online. And especially in a case where people are producing at such a high rate, things that have, incredible impact or can potentially have incredible impact, it's a really tricky ecosystem, especially for educators in this space. So you, having gone through, this journey, what are your thoughts in terms of what this new generation is going to face and the role that education is going to play in sort of preparing, these innovators for the business side of their innovative endeavors and what that might look like?
Yeah, that is a very great question. And give a shout out to the U.S. PTO team. You guys in the house? Yes. That is something I just had a wonderful discussion probably about 2 weeks ago with Derek Brent and the guys over there about how do we educate the next generation of entrepreneurs, kids, about the importance of protecting your intellectual property, your trademarks, and all those things. So that's something that I know is the top of mind for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And it's something that you have to be mindful of even when you're talking to the kids. One of my partners, one of my friends, Robert T. Green, who's in here, has a platform. His company, as an example, it's called Pre-Post Game. They talk about education, educating the youth about with the micro-learning, about how important it is to have patents and different things. So you're starting to see more and more people realize the seriousness and the importance of educating everyone about, especially with AI coming out, patent protection and everything. And I can tell you the answer, to go back to the first question, that I am excited to be an advocate for how do we get the message out that the community, and we need to create this digital learning community or some type of community to get everybody a fair chance to become an innovator and inventor. So it's top of mind, and it's something that, and you can talk to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office people about that, because I know that's something that is important. And even companies like, Robert, what he's doing with pre and post game, companies are out there looking for it or trying to do that.
Kim Reynolds with Arizona State University Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. Today in one of our sessions, we were talking about getting the advocacy behind invention education. And we were talking about the fact that every parent wants their kid to be a professional athlete. How do we shift that mindset? And I'm coming at you being a professional athlete. Okay. How do we shift that mindset from parents? So few kids get to move to that professional athlete, but every child has an opportunity to be an inventor. So how do we start changing that?
I think what we did with Change Your Game exhibit, which is a bilingual interactive exhibition that leverages sports and innovation. I think so often we say, well, you just can be an athlete or you just can be an innovator. Why can't you be an athlete that innovates? Right? So I think the message has to be that you can do both. And oftentimes, I know one way I'm able to get through to kids, especially young boys that I talk to, I sometimes got to have that conversation like, hey, man, you can go to any school you want to or play sports, but most important, do you have the grades? And let's talk about that. So I think the conversation has to be, I'm gonna get you engaged. What I know we can relate to, because with kids now, you got to be able to relate to them. My kids, I still tweet them and tell them, so you got to be able to relate to them. But so I relate to them on a level of like, yes, I was a professional athlete, but more importantly, I didn't let that define me. And that's the conversation.
And I'll just add in, and I really appreciate the comments about the exhibit and so many things that were mentioned about the questions and things were a direct result of the information we received and the guidance from Joanna and Avi and the research focus groups they did. But early on in the project, Dr. Jim West was one of the Lemelson Center advisors. And he spoke to us about the potential of this exhibit and why we should pursue it, because he felt it was so important, especially for African American males, to understand that there are different pathways to success beyond sport. And in this exhibit, not only are we showcasing examples of people who never thought of themselves as inventors, who found their way to an inventive path, but if your thing happens to be sports, there's lots of different aspects of the sport industry that you can contribute to through invention and creating technologies. Another thing, but of course what we tried to do in the exhibit with Joanna's guidance was to also explain that these problems and the approach to these challenges can be about sports, or they can be about the thing in your life that you find really important in your daily experience. So again, that's why I said earlier today that the sports is the hook and of the exhibition, but the exhibition itself is really about how the visitor thinks about their potential going forward. So a lot of those things came together.
Yep.
Any more?
That's it?
Okay.
Any more questions?
Well, if not, let me thank a lot of people. So from the deepest gratitude to Shawn for not only being here today, but Shawn's been an ambassador for the Change Our Game exhibit for years now. He got involved with this early. He's lended his time, his voice, his presence to a number of different programs and activities that we have done, building up to the opening and now through the opening and continuing on with the public engagement work. I really appreciate what the Lemelson Foundation, the Invention Education community has done to support and be interested in. It's so, can't tell you how great it is to have you all here sharing in this with us. So, I mean, Aaron was telling me that people were excited to see the exhibit. I'm like, well, God, we're excited to show you. So I would thank them. I really do thank the Museum of American History for hosting us today and for providing the space and helping with all my colleagues around the museum who helped prepare this event. And also just to my colleagues in the Lemelson Center who were part of this team and this amazing experience and this leap, you know, I talk about this leap of faith. You know, when we transitioned from, we're gonna do an exhibit about sport and technology to an exhibit about the visitor and how we change their identity, that was a leap of faith. And that was easy for us, a leap that was easy for us. And I remember the meeting that we all talked about that. And we all embraced it and we were excited, enthusiastic. And then we realized we needed to go explain this to everybody else. And so it wasn't just Joanna and Avi who joined the project and supported us and the foundation that supported us. It was the exhibit designers, the exhibit fabricators, the interactive developers, all the people on the project team in the museum who suddenly took a crash course in identity formation. And they too took the leap of faith with us. And they believed in the notion that we could have this kind of impact. The inventors and the athletes who were featured in the exhibition, we explained this to them. And folks like Shawn embraced the concept and they wanted to lend their time and their effort to helping this come to fruition. So there's a ton of people involved in this. We've talked a lot about passion, love, giving people opportunities. And today, you know, in the talk this morning about mutualism and finding your niche and lending your skill set to others and accepting the skill set from other groups to accentuate your own abilities. I think that all came out today. And I think as a final point, we had an entire conversation about invention without actually talking about Shawn's invention, if you noticed. And it was a very full conversation with depth and texture. So, you know, talking about the history of invention, the importance of invention, innovation, is, as Shawn actually said, it's about the people as much as the technology. So I leave you with those thoughts. And I don't know from Aaron, is there anything you want to say to people? Sorry, just totally put you on the spot.
Thanks everyone for being here and for participating this afternoon. We're breaking for the evening. You got all of the logistics from Lisa earlier, so everyone has their marching orders. There's dine-arounds, buses to go to, or you're on your own in DC. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we'll see you back at the West End tomorrow morning. Thanks again to the Lemelson Center and to Shawn Springs.